destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Israel announces it has split Gaza in two. And, in not so many words, are saying they will occupy at least half of it. Meanwhile, Gaza civilian death toll tops 10,000 with 25,000 injured. U.S. ports increasingly hit with protests over shipments to Israel. Meanwhile, in this country, Election Day across the country, we'll give you a roundup of which races to keep an eye on. In Washington, Biden re-election team says it's staying the course. Trump on the stand in New York Friar trial basically admits, yeah, they did a little bit. And tomorrow night, only 5 kids left in the kids' table debate. Give you a little preview of that. And with 10 days until a government shutdown, Republicans are meeting today to try and figure out how to legislate. SAG-AFTRA rejects the producer's last and best offer. Tesla mechanics in Sweden strike and force company to the table. And the foremost climate scientist in this country, who warned us about climate change in the first place, says it's worse than we thought. Again. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Emma, please do the honors.
It is a Newsday Tuesday.
That is correct. It is Newsday Tuesday. Hold on, let me adjust. We should say right off the bat, Matt is out today because he got word that you
were going to mess with the camera right away?
No, that Doug Burgum is not going to be in the debate tomorrow night, and he's in deep mourning.
It's a national day of mourning for North Dakotans across the country.
Yeah, Burgumentum in the Burgum recycling bin.
All right, well said.
Shoot. Yep. No, don't patronize me, please.
Well, also missing from the debate, of course, will be Mike Pence. You probably will not notice the absence of both those, except for we will see more opportunity for all 5, I would imagine. Although Vivek Ramaswamy always seems to look at the polls, see where non-Republican voters are. By that I mean young people, and then take that position. But you will see 5 people who will be incredibly bloodthirsty in their talk of what's going on in Israel and Gaza. We will get to Israel and Gaza in a bit. But first, wanted to play this clip. It's from the other day, and just remind you, because the UAW is in the process. Members are in the process of ratifying these different deals that they won under their strike. And it is a big deal. Obviously, the recent news has overshadowed this, but the implications of what the UAW have done not just for the UAW, although that's, I think, quite significant, but what it's doing in terms of labor actions within the auto industry. And I suspect, like we were talking with Jane McAlevey the other day, we're going to see it across labor writ large. But here is Jim Cramer, and I can't remember. I mean, look, Jim Cramer is the only value to Jim Cramer, more often than not, is either in retrospect to tell you what just hit his car. He had no idea that it was coming down the road, or to just enjoy.
Right, when he has freakouts
about
about workers actualizing their rights and getting higher wages.
I'm old enough to remember when he had a show with what was it called? Kramer and what was he was what's his face from Trump's? I can't even remember his name now.
Oh,
Kudlow?
Yes, yeah. Kudlow and Kramer. And that show was, Kramer was the liberal.
The reasonable one.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly.
I think that the UAW was underestimated the whole way because Fain just beat them everywhere. It was very much guerrilla action. It was very smart. They were completely, they were outgained at every turn. I mean, it was almost like Fain was a great NFL coach who really figured out all the weaknesses of the other team and just came in and blew them away. They were blitzing. They were doing everything right. I mean, they had like linebacker and corner blitzes and safety blitzes, and they like the other guys like I love Farley and I love Barr, and I think that they were, wow, what happened? They were in the wow, what happened camp, and when the game was over, it was just a real beatdown.
You may take issue with this, Emma, and certainly sports better than I do. But I think the reason why the UAW was so effective was not because the coach was a master strategist in the same way as in this instance, and I don't know if there's a sports metaphor to be had here. Maybe it is. The wide receiver comes back to the huddle and says, "Dude, I'm open."
Yeah.
Because I think from talking to Jane McAlevey, the entire strike strategy was built upon the knowledge of the workers. They knew from working in these plants, they knew which ones were key to Ford and Stellantis and GM. They knew which ones would be tough to run without, being faced with a quick hit strike. They're the ones who knew all these things. And that is what I think, made the difference in this. I don't know what sport that would be.
I think
coach?
It's still definitely applicable to the NFL, if you want to say that, because the greatest coaches understand the strengths of their players and listen to them, especially more modern ones. So I don't think it's necessarily the worst metaphor. What?
All right. No, okay, that's fine.
I threw cold water.
Of course, you were going to say it's going to be football.
Yeah, well, sure. That's where most of my knowledge lies, I would say. But at the same time, I mean, I take great enjoyment in Kramer saying that the workers had such success here, because they did, while at the same time referring to two of the CEOs of the big three by first name to say how much he likes them. So you have to know that it's painful for him to admit this, and he must have heard from his good buddies, yeah, they really took us to the cleaners on this. And you know why? It's because they deserved it, and because it's been years and years of exploitative contracts and the big three automakers essentially saying, yeah, we know we promised that we'd put back your cost of living adjustment, but we're going to break that promise because, God, it's way nicer to get big bonuses for CEOs. And workers were done with that.
Two other stories in labor that are worth mentioning. I saw this, I think it was also in Barcelona, but in this country, we've got port workers. Now, where did my story on that just go? That was weird. I just had it here. We've got port workers who are, here it is, basically shutting down ports or attempting to stop weapons that are being sent to Israel. That's happening at the AROC and ILWU Local 10 in Oakland. They have been, in 2014, they prevented Israeli ships from docking in Oakland. They've been turned away ever since. One of the longest lasting BDS victories. And now they're targeting a U.S. military ship that apparently is going to try and bring weapons there. In these times, Kim Kelly mentions that this is becoming a sort of concerted effort.
Amazing.
You, like I say, folks in Oakland are blocking this military ship. And we're starting to see this on the West Coast. I mean, those guys are pretty active in those the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. So we will see. But again, that's something that we could see around the country. And just on the SAG-AFTRA strike front, we're in day, like, what is it now?
117.
117. The producers over the weekend sent their last and best offer. And my understanding is that SAG has basically said, thanks, but no thanks. The IA provisions, as I understand it, are that you will get paid if you are scanned, but you will not get paid.
Oh, the AI stuff.
The AI.
Yeah,
Did I say IA?
IA, yeah. It's okay.
You will get paid if your image or voice presumably is scanned. But it won't be based upon usage, which of course is completely the opposite of the entire structure of the way that actors get paid. They get paid for a session fee, essentially, or a one-time, performance or whatever it is, and then you get residuals. In this instance, it's we're going to pay you for the session fee with no residuals. And to be clear, this is not just residuals on an existing work. It basically would allow your likeness, image, whatever it is, to be not even repurposed, to be regenerated, to work again. And the acting and profession is a strange sort of a profession, because your commodity is your labor and on some level your brand.
Right.
And so even if they can generate the labor, you don't have to leave. All of the labor that you've put in beforehand and your talent, your skill, whatever, your luck, contributes to the value of that product, and it would be unpaid. So
how are they still trying to float this? This is basically back to square one on the AI front. They're pretending like they're just increasing the one-time flat fee, but that was not the major concern.
Yes. And I think the idea was that they had given concessions on the other side. I'm not sure. I don't know the details of that offer. I just know how SAG-AFTRA has responded to it. I also can say that there is a push by some bigger name, and I think we reported on this a couple of weeks ago, bigger name actors. They want to get back to work. They want it to settle quick. So good for SAG-AFTRA and the negotiating people for holding out. That takes a lot of strength when you have some of your high profile people maybe giving you pressure.
Yep.
So we'll see. In the meantime, we've got a couple of sponsors today. I love both these sponsors, frankly. GiveWell has been advertising with us, I don't know, for I feel like 5 or 6 years, one time or another. And it's basically for folks who are looking to donate money. It doesn't matter how much it is, really. $3, $300, I don't know, I guess 3,000. But a lot of times when you're looking for a charity, you're not sure where your donation will have the most impact. In 2007, a group of donors had that exact question. They were looking to charities to answer that question, but nobody had it. And so basically what happened is they created GiveWell. It's an organization that provides rigorous, transparent research about the best giving opportunities they've found. GiveWell has now spent over 15 years researching charitable organizations only directs funding to the few of the highest impact opportunities they found in global health and poverty alleviation. Over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $1 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests these donations will save over 150,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. And GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make these informed decisions. You can find all of this research and recommendations on their site. It really is an amazing site. Whether you're looking to donate right now or not, I would urge you to go check it out. It's pretty fascinating. All of this research, all of it is for free. It's for free for you as a donor, and it's free for the donee. It is completely supported by a separate set of donations. And what they have over there is now what they're doing, they have a list of I think it's 4 top charities. And they basically lay it out for you. And you can go deep into this research as you want. And it's worth checking out. The thing that I really appreciate about them as well at GiveWell, they have literally a, I don't know what you call a silo or a menu thing where they talk about their mistakes, where they talk about over the course of the years they've been working, where have they gone wrong? Whether it's we didn't publish all the research, we messed up on privacy policy, we didn't publish certain reviews, whatever it is. They're very incredibly transparent, and this is all free. I have found multiple charities over the years to this, some that still are in their top 4, and some that were, number 8 or 9. You can go back and see what they've recommended in the past. Right now, they're doing 4 of what their top charities are. Now, they have other grants that they give to sort of broader charities, but again, all on the same principles. They've got, a program to provide bed nets to prevent malaria. They've got medication to prevent malaria. Vitamin A supplements apparently save a lot of lives, but have difficulty to getting there. What I am supporting through GiveWell is cash incentives for routine childhood vaccines. Costs $160 to vaccinate an infant. The funding provides cash transfers to incentivize caregivers to bring babies to clinics for routine childhood vaccinations, which prevent disease and reduce child mortality. Also, it has a knock-on impact of giving money to people directly with, really very limited requirements on their behavior, i.e. bring your kid in, get vaccinated, save them from a disease.
Right.
If you've never donated through GiveWell before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, as long as matching funds last. Claim your match. Go to givewell.org, pick podcast, and then enter the majority report with Sam Seder. Check out your $100 or up to $100. If it's $1, you'll get matched $1. If it's $10, you'll get matched $10. If it's $100, they'll match it $100. Do that at checkout. Make sure you know that you heard about GiveWell from the majority report. Get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate, and then just pick podcast when they ask you where you heard about it. Also, today's program sponsored by IAC Laser Engraving. Told
Good
you about those
holiday
folks?
gift.
Yes. Well, actually, we got one coming. My sister got one for It's the cats. I'll explain that in a moment, but I don't want to be too, just in case he's not going to listen to the show.
Yeah.
But it's a leftist-owned worker collective started by a longtime listener, Ryan Lubin. He started this, I don't know, I guess it's been about 3.5 years now, I should say 3 years now. His company is democratically structured, basically ensuring that any hierarchies or any type of anything like that are justified and efficient. They use sustainably sourced materials. They use an incredibly energy efficient laser technology, and they use this to bring you really cool and unique gifts or product. Hey, you can give it to yourself, products that you're not going to find anywhere else. This is really unique stuff, it also, remember, goes to supporting a business model that is structured around compassionate and worker-centered care, as opposed to the more traditional, crappy places that produce things. Check out a couple of these. These are awesome. This is the Fox. It is, they just call it the Fox, I guess. It is, as you can see.
It's so intricate.
It's a Fox. It is so intricate. It is 5 hand-painted, hand-glued layers. It is, you get this 3-dimensional design. So you could look at this forever, and you will find a different detail each time you take a look at it. It's on their website, $75. Just one of the many stuff. Saul right now has an owl in his or I should say, no, he's got a Sasquatch and a spaceman.
Oh yeah, the spaceman.
Astronaut.
Right.
I guess I don't know. Oh, and check this out. This is one of my favorites that I've ever seen of theirs. This is a honeycomb. It's 9-layer design. Totally awesome, as you can see. It's beautiful. Sweeten up your living space.
Oh.
Yeah, with the honeycomb. IAC lasers available for only $75 at iaclasers.com. But like I just sort of whispered, so that if my son, very unlikely, is watching the show, which is not inconceivable because he has a day off from school, but he will be getting a present. And I'm not going to say what it is right now because it just occurs to me he could be watching the show.
Yes, that's true.
But just completely unrelated, you can get puzzles, custom-made puzzles. They have puzzles there that are amazing. They come in these, beautiful inlaid boxes. But you can also have like photos. If it's your anniversary, your parents' anniversary, you put in a picture, you puzzle with their picture. If you have favorite pets or something to that effect, the puzzle can be the pets. I mean, it's anything. Go check out this site. Great company. IAClasers.com. Use the coupon code majority10 at checkout. Save 10% on your order. The website has been updated, so check it out. And make sure that you check out our podcast and YouTube description. We have always, our links are placed there. Let's go into what's happening with Election Day. We will, of course, touch on what's happening in Gaza. But right now across the country, elections, as far as I know, in every state in the country, most of them, local.
Right.
Some are state, some are not. But there are some big ones that you should really, if you are interested, pay attention into, in addition to going out, obviously, and voting in your own elections. For my list, maybe some others, but Ohio is hugely important. We had talked about this several months ago when there was an attempt by the Ohio Republican legislature to make it impossible, essentially, for Ohio residents to amend their constitution, because there is a referendum on the ballot today to amend the Constitution to provide for a woman's right to choose as a right, an abortion. And obviously, Republicans want to curtail a person's right to get an abortion if they need one. And among other things, we'll talk about Mike Johnson in a bit.
Yeah, but if this passes, I mean, that's a big deal in protecting abortion in Ohio. And I saw Rachel Cohen of Vox tweeted out the statistic that I think is important, that 87% of the abortions in Ohio in 2021 occurred before 13 weeks. Less than 1% were after 20 weeks, and 0 were after 24 weeks. The Republican Party wants to do a 6-week ban, essentially, in Ohio. This would protect the right for an abortion up to 23 weeks. So that's like the overwhelming majority, 99% of abortions that are done. The 6-week ban would be devastating, and that's essentially a total abortion ban.
So Ohio, really important to go out and vote. I think they're also legalizing weed, or attempting to. Check that out. Pennsylvania, big Supreme Court race, will not determine the sort of Democratic-Republican split, but it will protect the Democratic majority there. McCaffrey is the Democrat who's running in Pennsylvania. Of course, there's also state houses seats and whatnot. Pennsylvania, Ohio's going to show us how much enthusiasm there is behind abortion rights. I think it's not hard to imagine that it's quite high, but we will see. Pennsylvania will give us a good sense as what this swing state is going to do. Again, none of this is determinate in terms of 2024, but it will give us a notion. In Virginia, Youngkin is trying to, all 140 seats for their House are up for grabs. I'm not sure how many in the Senate, but there's two districts, 31st and 16th, which are pretty big. Democrats control the Senate. Republicans control the House. There's an opportunity for Democrats to swing the control of the House, and that would be a good thing. Youngkin, on the other hand, wants to turn this into Florida. And so this is also, Virginia is always considered a big bellwether. It's going to impact the narrative going forward. In Kentucky, Andy Beshear, popular governor.
Democrat.
Who knows, though? I mean, it's a deeply red state. This is just going to give a notion of can Democrats win in red areas, despite the fact that people are mad at Joe Biden. And in Mississippi, don't think that you're going to see a Democratic governor. It's Reeves versus, is it Presley, I think?
Yes, the second cousin of Elvis Presley.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, second cousin, and got the name. I mean, that's really the money situation there. That's the Democrat that's running. So,
but whereas in Kentucky, basically Beshear is saving things like preventing an abortion ban and preventing all of the worst of right-wing policies. Will give us a notion of how much people want to avoid that. In Mississippi, we get a notion of at least where black voting turnout is. Again, red state, but this is, and there's only so much information you can glean from these things, but it will be one data point. And then, of course, New Jersey, there's a couple of key races in New Jersey as well. And then local elections around the country. So keep an eye on that. We'll give you an update on those races tomorrow.
And if you are in any of those states, go
vote.
I mean, especially Ohio. This is as big as it gets, I would say, in terms of ballot referendums.
Kentucky, same situation. You're voting against an abortion ban in many respects.
That's true.
So check that out. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the potential for a government shutdown. Right now, Republicans are meeting with, Mike Johnson has everybody down there in the basement in I'm not sure which congressional office space. No word as to whether he's checking their computers for having viewed porn. That would be an interesting thing for him to do. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about this. Apparently, he does that with his son.
He needs to.
His 17-year-old son. They check each other.
They hold each other accountable on jerking off, which is healthy.
That's not fully accurate.
Okay.
It's watching pornography.
Understood. I'm sorry.
It's not. I don't think they get in the showers with each other or anything like that. I mean, I don't think they're like constantly, or they have like,
well, if they were, we know
some type of maybe there's something you could put on like a Fitbit.
Mm-hmm.
And
or
would send a message to each other.
Chastity Fitbits.
Yes.
Right.
Actually.
Monitoring people's pulse and heart rates.
Just in case you were wondering
to get closer to God.
What my side hustle was going to be. Yeah, now I know what it is. A new Fitbit. We're all going to be in a group together with our Fitbits, and we're
chastity rings, but not the ring that goes on your finger. Sorry.
There are. Oh God. There are.
We went down this road.
Well, I didn't go that far. We are 10 days from a government shutdown, and essentially, what is the sort of the big story is that the Senate is not really terribly interested in the games that the Republicans in the House want to play. And by the Senate, I'm talking also a significant portion of the Republican senators, because they know there's an election coming up. And Republicans will clearly be blamed for a government shutdown because they are clearly causing it. there are like three ideas apparently that Johnson is considering. This is from Punchbowl. One is called the laddered continuing resolution. I can't even begin to understand it. It is a made-up thing that the Freedom Caucus people have come up with, where essentially they would just
tier the funding bills of, like, there's 12. 4 would be on the December track. 8 would be on the January track, but this is just like a redux of what was done that almost led us to the government shutdown at the end of September, right?
It's a completely like bizarro thing that apparently people in the Senate have never even heard of. That's not going to go anywhere, although that will help sink any type of Republican efforts in the House.
We have a clip of Johnson explaining the laddered CR.
Let's hear this.
Yeah. It's nonsensical, but this is what the Freedom Caucus wants. And this is this guy's, supposedly closer to this group of crazies than McCarthy.
Can you just tell us more specifically when you expect to make a decision on a CR? Because again, just being 11 days out, we're getting very close to that clock. Also, can you walk us through this ladder CR approach for people who may not understand that, and why consider something new when you're less than 2 weeks out?
Well, listen, our number one objective here is to take care of our obligations and do it in a responsible manner. We want to be good stewards of the public's treasury and treasure. And because we're in the situation that we're in, deeply in debt, we have to do this. We have to think about this differently. So with regard to the latter CR, or maybe a two-tiered CR, it's one of the ideas that has been discussed. There's nothing magical or mysterious about it. It would just be effectively two phases. You would do one part, a subset of the bills by a December date, and the rest of it by a January date. The other alternative is a CR that would go into January with certain stipulations. But again, I'm not going to show you all the cards right now. We have some very constructive and I think very positive discussions going on. I think it should be palatable to our colleagues in the Senate because they understand we've got to get the job done. I'll tell you, I'm very encouraged, and I think the American people are encouraged when they see the hard work that's being done here. We made a commitment that we will get back to the business of actually passing appropriations bills.
But they won't. They won't get this. Incidentally, they're also breaking the deal that they signed with the Democrats. What was it, like 5 or 6 months ago now?
Yep.
So
Summer.
Senate doesn't seem to have any interest in this. If I had to bet, they're going to do a clean continuing resolution. I don't know if that goes into January, but it's also possible that the Senate will send a huge omnibus bill that will both effectively approve the budget and include the $100 billion of Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan border aid. There's a couple other smaller things in there for domestic stuff. Basically, the war supplementary to supplement the massive military budget we have. That's what we're looking at.
And then, that would be a way to peel off some of those Republicans in purple states who want to avert a government shutdown for their own electoral chances. And they also want to get Israel this money so they can continue their mass murders in Gaza. But that's what the Senate is prepping. But also Mike Johnson would have to bring that up for a vote, right? And maybe he wouldn't do that.
Well, I don't know what they would have to do. I mean, they could avoid bringing up the bill from the Senate, but the idea that you have the entire Senate saying Mike Johnson, including Mitch McConnell, saying Mike Johnson won't hold a vote on this is it's going to put him in a very tough position, because the real position that's going to be tough is for those 18 Republicans who come from a Joe Biden district. Yep. And, regardless of Joe Biden's favorability numbers, the bottom line is those are people who want government to function, and they're going to have to go back to their constituents and say, why are you supporting Mike Johnson when you've shut down the government?
And you also, I think, now have to worry a little bit about when you're tethering Israel aid to the government, to the omnibus bill, some of these squad members who are growing increasingly vocal about saying that we shouldn't be sending aid to Israel in any way right now until they commit to not doing any more war crimes. That's also a possibility just to monitor.
Well, yeah, I just don't know that they'll get a chance. They won't make the difference in the vote. It's either if the vote comes up, it's going to get enough Democrats and enough Republicans who want to avoid a government shutdown where those 18 Democrats aren't going to make a difference at that point.
But there's 18 purple state Republicans. It's almost equivalent to that number.
I don't think that we're going to see a situation where only 18 of those defect in terms of the Republicans.
I
think it's going to be that those 18 are going to freak out. But I mean, the scenario you're talking about is I guess conceivable.
It's plausible. It's just something to look at.
But those 18, your addition is wrong, because if the other 190 Democrats vote with the other, with
the 18.
Well, I guess you're saying there would only be 18 that would vote. I don't think there's not going to be. Mike Johnson's not going to bring up a bill where only 18 Republicans are going to vote for it. They're going to have to all get along to.
But then we're
vote.
back to square one. Is like, will he bring it up then? Because they're so insane, and we're literally in the same situation we were in September because they don't want to vote for an omnibus bill.
That's what we're going to find out. And they may make a deal, like they will finally get their ability to vote for. Banning abortion, banning any type of birth control.
Wokeness.
All of it. Right now, the Democrats are already starting to fund and place ads in based on these spending bills for those Republicans we were talking about. Because some of these bills that they're talking about are really nuts. They're going to, try and cut school funding. They're going to try and outlaw abortion federally. It's going to be a whole series of these things. Agriculture cuts. There's just a bunch of stuff, I think, that people... and let's dig in a little bit into Mike Johnson. We haven't had really an opportunity to do this, as there has been more information of Mike Johnson coming out.
It is odd. I mean, he feels like an AI creation. I've said that from the start. Even the way he speaks, he's so nondescript. But he clearly checked a ton of boxes of like being a complete right winger and also a theocrat that was inoffensive to others.
What you're talking about, that AI, is sort of the evangelical. That is
their algorithm.
That's the algorithm, and. He has, and a reminder, I did not make this up, this concept of lying for the Lord. This is, he has no problem denying certain realities which he knows don't resonate with the vast majority of the American public. They are on a project for minoritarian rule. They realize this. They have no problem with it. You can start to see writings now from the evangelical right saying what they need is a Caesar of their own in the form of Donald Trump. The idea that Mike Johnson is aware that the majority of Americans don't want to have an abortion ban. He doesn't care about that as a matter of governance. He understands it as a matter of politics. So he's out there denying that he ever supported one. Let's play this clip of Mike Johnson. This is clip number 7A. Okay, the first 7.
Talking about abortion here on Fox with Shannon Bream.
I want to talk about some social issues. You've got a lot of critics who say that you are wildly out of step with the American people. Let's talk abortion first. One of the groups opposing you says this. He wants a total abortion ban with no exceptions. He supported bans that would not only criminalize abortion, but ban IVF treatments and common forms of birth control, and that you voted against access to contraception. Where are you on these issues? Is that an accurate assessment of where you are? Because that's not in step with the American people.
No, Shannon, look, I'm pro-life. I've said very clearly, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe in the sanctity of every single human life. So I come to Congress with deep, personally held convictions. But guess what? So do my 434 other colleagues in the House. Everyone comes to Congress with their deeply held convictions. But the process here is that you make law by consensus. And I'm not brought forward any measure to address any of those issues. Right now, our priorities are funding the government, handling these massive national security priorities that we have in crises around the globe, and taking care of changing and reforming how Congress works. That's what we're going to do. Listen, prior to the modern time, I mean, until recently, actually, almost all of our nation's leaders openly acknowledged that they were also Bible-believing Christians. I mean, this is not something that should cause great unrest, okay? It's just that Washington right now, what you're seeing, Washington and the Associated Press Corps are engaging with a leader who openly acknowledges faith and the foundational principles of our country.
Okay,
I think this is a healthy discussion, but it doesn't affect how we run Congress.
To be clear, though, have you voted against fertility treatments and access to contraception? Would you?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what they're talking about. I really don't remember any of those measures.
But do you oppose anything?
I am personally pro-life, yeah. No, of course not. No, that's something that's blessed a lot of families who have problems with fertility.
Okay, he's lying. He's lying. I mean, he is personally pro-life, and personally pro-life for him means no birth control, no contraceptives, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, Johnson has co-sponsored at least 3 bills hoping to ban abortion at the nationwide level, including the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, the Protecting Pain-Capable Unborn Children from Late-Term Abortions Act, and the Heartbeat Protection Act of 2021, all of which carry criminal penalties of up to 5 years in prison for physicians who perform abortions.
In July of 2022, Mike Johnson voted against the Right to Contraception Act, H.R. 8373. It would create a legal right to obtain and use all FDA administration-approved forms of contraception. Now, to be fair, that was 15 months ago, and I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But that's how he voted against it.
I mean, he's such an anti-abortion, ideologue, essentially, that in 2015, he blamed abortion on school shootings. The quote is, "Many women use abortion as a form of birth control, in certain segments of society." And it's just shocking and sad, but this is where we are. When you break up the nuclear family, when you tell a generation of people that life has no value, no meaning, that it's expendable, then you do wind up with school shooters. So this is like the level that we're operating at with this man.
And also, to be clear, this isn't, he's not just anti-abortion. People should understand that.
Yep.
I'm sure there are some people who are just anti-abortion. But he is against the ability of women in particular, maybe as a second order, men too, to determine whether or not they're going to not only carry a pregnancy to term. He's for forced births, without a doubt. He's also for forced conception, in the sense that he is voting against birth control. He's voting against birth control. They want to control the sexuality of women, and as a second order, men, not so much.
No, I'm pretty sure.
Men can be trusted.
I'm pretty sure that the condoms are not going to be the ones that they come for first. We always know that they go.
Trusted. We all know what happened in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
It was Eve who ate the apple, not Adam.
I mean, yes.
But this is where he's at. This guy is a huge right-wing theocrat. He is a Christian nationalist. He has no compunction lying for the Lord. Let's listen to this. This is Mike Johnson from a 2008 radio interview showing both his bigotry about gay people and his fundamental lack of knowledge about history.
Many historians, those who are objective, would look back and recognize and give some credit to the fall of Rome to not only the deprivation of the society and the loss of morals, but also to the rampant, homosexual behavior that was condoned by the society.
Not so much.
The fall of Rome is largely believed or accepted to have happened in the late 5th century, in like the 480 470, I can't remember exactly, but it's somewhere around there. And it just so happens that in the 4th and 5th centuries, the spread of Christianity was the period in which Romans became less tolerant of homosexuality. Not more tolerant of homosexuality, but less tolerant of homosexuality. So the reality is, and this is widely accepted.
Yeah. At Rome's heights, many of the senators and statesmen that you read of today were engaged in homosexual relationships with people that they were working with and wrote about it openly.
And as the Roman Empire became less tolerant of homosexuality, they began their fall. Now, does that mean that there's a causal connection between being less tolerant of homosexuality and the fall of Rome? No. But what it does mean is it's impossible that Rome fell because they were more tolerant of homosexuality, because they were not more tolerant of homosexuality. During that time, they were less tolerant. But this is the history that these type of religious zealot fundamentalists.
He's a creationist.
Believe.
I mean, he has this New York Magazine has a great piece just like listing some of his insane opinions from the past. I mean, in 2015, Johnson represented the Ark Encounter Creationist theme park, which featured dinosaurs riding on a life-size Noah's Ark in its successful legal battle to secure $18 million in tax subsidies from the state of Kentucky. So he's a creationist, which also means that his historical understanding is completely non-existent, and it's in keeping with his views there of the fall of Rome. I mean, he also has written extensively in the past against gay marriage. He wrote in he was a senior counsel for the ADF. He went before the Louisiana Supreme Court in 2004 and 2014 to defend a statewide ban on gay marriage. He's got a long record of being just a traditional theocratic conservative. And so the fact that he's denying this on cable news and denying his past, I mean, it's lying for the Lord, as you say. As long as you're doing the Lord's work, it doesn't really matter if you're an imperfect vessel. It's all about the ends justifying the means, right?
But the important thing, though, Emma, is that he's a good parent.
Oh, sure.
And
involved in his kid's life.
Involved in his kid's life. I have a 10-year-old son. I have an 18-year-old daughter. And of course, I began to monitor their porn intake shortly after watching this clip last year of Mike Johnson
sharing some like really impressive technology with the world. Why are you against modernity?
Here we go.
With covenant eyes within your home. And so why is that such an effective tool? Why do parents need to put this into their home?
Yeah, that's great question. We probably could have called this more appropriately a war on the darkness of technology, because there are some good things with technology, of course. I mean, you know, the Bible apps we all love, we broadcast our services, you know, on our social media, and there's some very positive things, but there's also, as Clint's pointed out aptly, some really dark things. So Covenant Eyes is the software that we've been using a long time in our household. I first learned about it at, I think, a Promise Keepers event in the early 2000s. I think it was developed in about the year 2000. But it's the largest accountability software that there is, and there's some paperwork out there on the table that I think everybody may have picked up on the way in. If not, go get it. It's a subscription-based. I mean, we don't make any money on this. I'm telling you, we use it. Okay, I'm endorsing it because I'm a user. It's about $15 a month, $16 a month, something like that. And you get up to 10 devices. And what it is, it's accountability software. So men in a church, you know, men's Bible study groups will do it. That's how it's presented at Promise Keepers. But they also mention, hey, when your kids become teenagers, especially if you have boys, dads, they're talking to the guys at this event, you might want to think about doing this with your sons. And so we've been doing that. And so what it does real simply is it has an algorithm and software. It's way above my head how it works, but it scans, you obviously opt into it, but it scans all the activity on your phone or your devices, your laptop, tablet, what have you. We do all of it. And then it sends a report to your accountability partner. So my accountability partner right now is Jack, my son, right? And so he's 17. So he and I get a report of all the things that are on our phones or all of our devices once a week. If anything objectionable comes up, your accountability partner gets an immediate notice. I'm proud to tell you my son he's got a clean slate, all right? Yeah. But we get a report and it says, hey, no activity of concern, and it's really sensitive. It'll pick up almost anything. It looks for keywords, search terms, and also images. Ooh. And it will send your accountability partner a blurred picture of the image. And so on occasion I get one. I was just looking at the one from this week I got on Jack, and it said, This is the only one that may be questionable, and it's this blurred image of two women talking in a live screen thing, and I zoom in and I have to unblur it, and it's two middle-aged teachers.
Oh God! Wait, whoa! This is getting hot. It's two middle-aged teachers doing what?
What happens next? We tried to grab more of this talk. Bradley told us that he tried to, but as soon as this news started to break out, the I guess church or the religious organization that put on this talk put the video on private. So yeah, that's all the context that we have. I mean, and I don't know if my brain and my ears could take much more, to be honest. But
big credit to the Twitter account Receipt Maven for finding this, because this was an unlisted YouTube video on the Cypress Baptist Church YouTube account in Benton, Louisiana, and I guess after they found it, they made the video private.
Yeah, because it's a little creepy. I mean, he's zooming in like he's, he's like Jack Bauer or something like that on the
zooming on these.
Grainy. Well, enhance.
I got news for you. As somebody who has like a family thing, like I've done this with my kids, where it's like you cut off certain websites. Now I don't read the stuff and I don't get an accountability report, but I also know that if it included my phone, I could shut it off from my phone.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit suspect that Mike is at the same, but the bottom line is this is the society that he foresees. This guy is a right-wing authoritarian theocrat who believes in monitoring the sexuality of his 17-year-old son. And I got news for you. There is no doubt in my mind that he would have no compunction in monitoring other people's sexuality, and certainly is willing to sort of like geofence them from being able to buy contraception in that sense. So this is the guy who is in charge of this. Now, one last clip we have of Mike Johnson. It's interesting. He claims he has no financial interest whatsoever in that accountability app. What was it? The Covenant app?
Yeah.
The Covenant, and people should read into, like, they have a covenant marriage. They can't get divorced. He and his wife.
I also like the idea, too, of the fact, go on, Sam, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, the point being is that their covenant is, strict religious fundamentalism in which he oversees everyone. Now, right. It's possible he has no interest in that, and that's just an app that he promotes, that they don't give him any money, that he doesn't own a share of it. And we could easily know by looking at his financial disclosures, because every member of Congress must make such disclosures. Like, it would say like, I own this much in that, or I own that much in this, or I have this much money in that bank account, or I have that much money in that bank account. Here is more from that Fox News Sunday where they ask him like about the fact that you have no bank accounts or assets listed on your disclosures.
No, but I have to ask you this because there's been so much made about it. Vanity Fair says this. What's up with Mike Johnson's very shady seeming financial disclosures? They say you've never reported a bank account or an asset on a financial disclosure form going back to 2016. Can you clear that up for us?
Yes, look, I'm a man of modest means, okay? I was a lawyer, but I did constitutional law, and most of my career I spent in the nonprofit sector. We have 4 kids, 5 now, that are very active, and I have kids in graduate school, law school, undergraduate. We have a lot of expenses, but I can relate to everybody else. My father was a firefighter, right? I didn't grow up with great means, but I think that helps us be a better leader because we can relate to every hardworking American family. That's who we are, and I think it governs and helps govern my decisions and how I lead.
Well, majority of Americans now say they're living paycheck to paycheck, so a lot of folks in the same boat.
Oh, in the same boat
as they try
as
to
you.
figure out this economy.
Yeah.
Speaker, we're
lots of folks with no bank account who are in Congress who are trying. I mean, that was a shameful lack of follow-up.
I'm a man of modest means. I have no reported assets.
Yes,
right?
except I do own a home.
I can-
so
listen, I
had
can
to have a bank account at one point.
Well, he could rent.
He has a home. Like I think that was one part of the disclosure, but no bank account that was disclosed.
Well, it turns out. Do we have a follow-up clip to this, or is it just a statement that he put up? Statement that Mike Johnson put out that his checking account is a completely no interest bearing account and therefore does not need to be disclosed according to the House ethics requirements. Now, for a guy who really wants to be an important, like a financial steward, I mean, really no interest?
Yeah.
I mean, checking accounts at low interest, but absolutely no interest, and you don't have a savings account.
Yeah. He has a mortgage. That's what I just wanted to clarify.
All the money comes in, and every month he makes a couple $100,000, right? As a congressman, what is it now? Up to about 200,000, 190 something. I would not be shocked if his wife did not work, and his money comes in and just stays in a checking account, no savings account.
Odd.
I mean, I get that you may not have much in your savings account, but not $200, not $300. You just hit the perfect number every month, and you're like, I'm going to leave it in this completely zero. I personally, I think there is some super weird situation going on.
Absolutely. I mean,
where he's
looking
like
at
giving the money to his
LLCs,
church.
Yes, of
and he gets
course,
an
hiding it
allowance
in
from
the
his church or something.
Yes, tax-free over there, and that would be in service of God, so it doesn't really matter. Again, like he also did not anticipate being in this position. So if he had more time to mount a campaign for speakership, he might have done a little bit of kind of disclosure or gone back and make it look a little bit less shady. But obviously, this is bizarre. There's no chance. There's no way.
Someone's saying that he's a gold bug, but no, if he was a gold bug, he'd have to report those assets as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that there are checking accounts that they don't pay any interest, but the idea that you wouldn't also have a savings account with it, associated with it, when you make it $200,000 a year, I find that hard to believe. Maybe it's the case. But I also suspect that there's something else going on here. And I think even his dad, who was a fireman, probably had a savings account.
Yeah. Quite bizarre.
All right. Before we go to the fun half, let's just talk a little bit about the latest news regarding Gaza.
So basically, now we know for certain that 10,000 Palestinians killed in this month-long bombing of the small area of the Gaza Strip, 140-ish square miles around that. And we had speculated on this program before that we felt that it was likely that the Israeli government would use this as an excuse to continue to occupy the Gaza Strip or annex it. And I think that the way that they've announced that essentially they're dividing Gaza into north and south, and the north is where they're doing these military operations and where they're doing this indiscriminate bombing. And we should be clear, 10,000 is like definitely an undercount because there's so many bodies under rubble. But this is an opportunity for land seizure for the Israeli government, I would say. And that is definitionally ethnic cleansing by every single definition.
Yeah, they literally have ethnically cleansed the northern Gaza. They say they're going to stay there. And will you put up that tweet of what the NSC chief has said? This is I can't remember Kirby's first name, but John Kirby. John Kirby's response to being asked about IDF efforts to minimize civilian deaths. This he was asked yesterday. Kirby says, and this is a quote. We've checked this quote from a couple of different sources, just so that you know. We have seen some indications that there are efforts being applied in certain scenarios to try to minimize, but I don't want to overstate that. I mean, this to me seems like, and I don't want to overstate this, but a limited acceptance, acquiescence to the charge that Israel has been engaged in a war crime. Because even in the most sort of generous reading of the internationally based rules regime of war, the idea is that you must make all efforts to avoid killing innocent civilians. And he's saying that they have only seen, they only see that there are efforts being applied in certain scenarios.
Oh, I mean, how many caveats can you count there? 3 in a, 2-sentence quote there?
Here's what's also enraging about this. And Ayabe says, I'm really puzzling over the fact that Biden can't or won't call for a ceasefire. I'm wondering if they're throwing the election. Do you think they even care? There's a huge chance they'll lose. Do you think they're actually aware of it? I don't want to waste too much time pondering over that, but it had really wrecked my brain. Curious to hear what you say. Well, first off, I suspect that they don't see it as the political liability that you do. They may be wrong in that point, but I just don't think they see it as the political liability, or that it won't be a liability a year from now. That's my guess. Or they're banking on the idea that there's fundamentally no difference between Biden and Trump on this issue. I mean, even the Republican Congress wants to send that $14 billion to Israel. You've got Trump's former Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, who wants to ban Palestinians from coming into this country. Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem.
Marsha Blackburn saying that Rashida Tlaib is calling for the genocide of Jews.
But here's the part that I find really just enraging in many, one of the parts that I find enraging. Today, or yesterday, I should say, we saw 2 different pieces basically saying the same thing. In the New York Times, Biden confronts the limits of U.S. leverage in 2 conflicts. That's from the New York Times by David Sanger. In the Washington Post, White House frustrated by Israel's onslaught, but sees few options. In this, pull up the Times one if you can. And then to get the Washington Post. I'm going to read just from the Sanger piece. The Sanger piece is almost something that you'd want to like hang in your art gallery. It is fascinating. And you're going to have to trust me because I'm not going to read the entire piece. But scroll down. It says, for 10 days, the Biden administration has been urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to allow for humanitarian pauses in the bombing of Gaza, hoping that the $3.8 billion a year in American security assistance would carry with it enough influence over the Israeli leaders' tactics.
So just in and of itself.
Okay, now hold on.
Okay.
It has not.
Yeah.
Mr. Netanyahu rebuffed Mr. Biden's push for greater efforts to avoid civilian casualties in a phone call on Monday, and he's pushed ahead with what he's called mighty vengeance for the October 7th attack, using huge bombs to collapse Hamas's network of tunnels, even if they also collapse whole neighborhoods in Gaza. Now, I mean, and then I'm going to skip down. The other two is just sort of like, then there's three paragraphs talking about Ukraine. There's a long history of U.S. presidents realizing they don't have as much leverage over Israel as they thought, said Representative Seth Moulton, Massachusetts Democrat, former Marine. And then he talks about Ukraine. Then there's another paragraph that just talks about the history of these things and somebody talking about Hamas and Putin. And then Mr. Biden brings to a passion to these fights that he reaches back to his days as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and vice president. His aides report that he believes history will remember him for how he defended democracy against forces of chaos, terror, and dictatorship. Okay. And that's just about it. There are two sort of like things that seem to be missing from that.
A fundamental understanding of what leverage means?
Well, there's also $14 billion in the pipeline to go to Israel on top of the 3.8. That's not mentioned once in this piece on how frustrated the administration is that they don't have any leverage. Are they not aware that there's $14 billion that they have said we want to go to Israel?
Yeah.
Two, I would also add that those huge bombs to collapse Hamas's network of tunnels, even if they also collapse whole neighborhoods in Gaza, it's not so much, I mean, it's bad to collapse buildings.
Yes.
That's obviously very bad.
Making millions homeless, 1.5 million displaced. But there's also the issue of what happens when buildings collapse on children in one of the most densely populated areas on the planet.
When you see two pieces come out in the same day that are essentially the same pieces, the New York Times, Sanger's doing his piece, Biden confronts the limit of the U.S. leverage in two conflicts, and then put up this Washington Post one. White House frustrated by Israel's onslaught, but sees few options.
We've tried nothing and we're all out of options. We've tried nothing and nothing's working.
Now, to be fair, this piece is longer and more in depth, but I want to read this one paragraph from it. It is deep, deep into the piece. So scroll down, see if you can find it, Bradley. It starts with Washington's is Israel's largest military backer. Now, it's sort of amazing. Yeah, there you go. It's sort of amazing that you go through. Can you scroll through? Well, can you scroll through this piece? Maybe highlight that so you can return to it, and then scroll through. Look at how long this piece is before we get to where the leverage is from. Okay, keep going down. 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 Okay. Washington is Israel's largest military backer. And the White House has asked Congress for an additional $14 billion in aid for Israel in the wake of the Hamas attacks. But administration officials and advisors say the levers of the United States theoretically has over Israel, such as conditioning military aid on making the military campaign more targeted, are non-starters. Partly because they would be so politically unpopular in any administration, and partly because they'd say Biden himself has a personal attachment to Israel. Now, I don't know what it means they would be so politically unpopular in any administration means, other than them basically saying that the blob, as it were, regardless of who is president, would have a problem with the $14 billion in aid. I mean, that number doesn't come out of the blue, right?
No.
I mean, would someone be mad with 16 if it's why it's not 16 billion? Would someone be mad if it's not 11 billion? Would someone be mad if it's not 8 billion? Like, who are we talking about here? The idea that the leverage is theoretical is not theoretical. That is not theoretical. It is, no one is using that leverage. They have decided not to use the leverage because it is a non-starter to even mention not giving it to them.
I mean, and even though there are dissent cables being filed within the State Department of many workers there essentially saying, well, this is untenable and this is a genocide, and I do not want to sign my name to this. The dissent cables started in the Vietnam War for people to express internally their, frustrations, but we need to start seeing even more resignations over this to get the message really through here, not just internal cables.
Warsucks asks this question, which has been asked many times on the show. We've answered it many times. But Sam, what would a one-sided ceasefire look like? Well, what a one-sided ceasefire would look like is sort of the opposite of the one-sided bombing campaign we see right now. Okay? So what you would do is you would no longer level. You would no longer level Gaza. You would no longer drop bombs indiscriminately on Gaza.
And on the hostages that are there, by the way.
And you would stop. It seems to me that if there are rockets being fired from Gaza into Israel, you could do a targeted response on those installations.
And a targeted response on Hamas, if you'd like, as well, in terms of like special operations. I mean, we're not talking about a military that is starved for resources at this point. Israel has the most weaponry, the most technologically advanced weaponry possible, and a ton of it.
You would also maybe say we're going to have some benchmarks instead of like killing more civilians than terrorists, in your estimation, or Hamas members, or whatever you want, however you want to refer to them. Instead of saying we do 10 to 1 or 5 to 1 or 1 to 1, maybe you would say we need to be sure of killing X number of military versus civilians at that point.
But that would be a rational response, and that's not what they're engaging in.
Let me answer this question. I mean, because I want to answer this question because this person keeps asking the same question. What's a good idea to how to deal with Hamas? I think this is a bad idea on how to deal with Hamas, because you may get rid of the organization Hamas. I don't think you will. The leaders are in Qatar. If you really want to go after the leadership of Hamas, you should be bombing Qatari TV studios. Why isn't Israel doing that? Because the price of a Palestinian living in Gaza's life is just much cheaper for them than the cost associated with bombing a TV studio in Qatar. But I would say, how would you deal with Hamas? The way I would deal with Hamas is say, we have effed this up for 40 years. And what we need to do is continue to have our Iron Dome, continue to police our border, and then start pouring money into and do exactly what Israel did with Hamas, which was give them more favorable treatment, nurture their growth, allow funding to come in via Qatar. All of those things they did to promote Hamas in Gaza so that the Palestinian Authority and that the Palestinian leadership would be fractured and there would be no political force in which to essentially generate either a 1 or 2 state solution, that has been the explicit strategy of the Israeli government for years, I would do the opposite. I would release Bugatti from the Marwan Bugatti from the prison. I would nurture other competing secular Palestinian political movements. I would pull back from the settlements in the West Bank, and I would spend a multi-decade year project disempowering Hamas by empowering other Palestinians. Now, the Israeli government will not do that. I understand that. But you wanted an option. That's the option.
Yes. And
the option that they're pursuing now clearly has failed.
They're dropping. I just want to give a sense of this. They dropped more bombs in Gaza in 1 week. It's been multiple weeks in 1 week than Afghanistan did, or than the United States did in Afghanistan in the heaviest year of the bombardment. Afghanistan is 252,000 square miles. Gaza's 141 square miles. So we do the opposite of that.
Rhonda Reagan says, are you aware of the Ben Gurion Canal? I don't think it's about the Ben Gurion Canal. If anything, it is far more likely about offshore drilling rights from Gaza. Ben Gurion Canal is going to provide $6 billion a year, maybe in revenue. I'm sure from the United States perspective, they're very happy to have Israel be able to be self-funded and not have both the political and the financial obligations in which to continue to support this this country. But I would imagine it's also the oil leasing rights. I think there's a lot more money there.
I mean, the ethnic cleansing is the first order objective here, obviously. To Sam's point, if you really wanted to go after Hamas leadership, we know where they are. We know where Hamas leadership is. I mean, they're doing TV spots. But this is about collectively punishing an entire population that the Israeli government and unfortunately many Israelis see as surplus due to decades and decades of brainwashing about the existential threat of the scary Arabs. So we're dealing with a nationalist, religious nationalist government, however you want to paint it, but one that's been emboldened by the most powerful country in the world through weapons and through constant aid that the United States is about to triple the aid likely that they receive without them essentially even attaching any conditions to it as they engage in what scholars have called crimes of genocide. It's insane. It's insane. And I mean, Biden's ideological or commitment to Israel or his sympathies, that's what the moral leadership that he said he would bring back to the White House. That's pretty threadbare, if you ask me.
All right, we're going to head into the fun half of the program. Reminder from Mainers from Haywood. Mainers, vote no on Proposition 1 and yes on Proposition 3 to support Pine Tree Power. This is a really important vote, too. Failed to mention at the beginning of the show. We've had people on to talk about this. It's basically, I don't know what the word is when a state takes over the power. It's not nationalization, obviously, because it's not a national thing, but it is essentially a state government takeover of the power production and delivery in Maine. And there's absolutely no reason why Maine wouldn't do it, in my estimation. So if you want Pine Tree Power, vote no on Proposition 1, because they have been very sophisticated in the way that they're trying to make this impossible. There's like one vote, which is Proposition 3. You could vote yes on Proposition 3, but then Proposition 1 actually inhibits Proposition 3 from going through. So it is vote no on Proposition 1 and yes on Proposition 3 in Maine. Tell your friends, go out and vote. We will see you in the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, you get the free show free of commercials, and then you get the fun half. Then you also get the IM us on the fun half via the free app. And don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, including the Majority Report blend. Be the most popular person on your block. Have the Majority Report coffee blend. That's where everybody's going to want to come and have your coffee clatches. Majority Report.
What's a clatch? What's a coffee clatch?
You don't know what a coffee clatch is?
Never heard of such a
It's
thing.
like everybody gets together and has some coffee.
That's nice.
Talks.
Ah, all right.
Majority Report blend.
I learn something new every day.
JustCoffee.coop. Great co-op out of Madison, Wisconsin. Emma, ESPN.
Yeah, we went pretty deep into, I would say, the most exciting week in the NFL so far. Week 9, we spoke about C.J. Stroud. We talked about the AFC North being a juggernaut. We talked about Daniel Jones being out for the year. The Giants probably should tank for the rest of the year. And we also dove into the Jim Harbaugh sign-stealing scandal at Michigan and what that really means for the NCAA. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
All right, folks. Also check out
Left Reckoning.
Left Reckoning. Matt is very distraught over Doug Burgum not going to be in the debate tomorrow night, so we gave him 24 hours to collect himself. He came in this morning. He was just like falling to pieces.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing.
Honestly, we had to send him home.
And so we said, go home, get yourself together, come back tomorrow and buck up. Doug Burgum's could shoot up in the polls and maybe be. Is there a fourth debate?
Yeah.
There's a fourth debate.
There's still chance.
Keep hope alive.
Yeah.
And so Matt will be back tomorrow. All right. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. Majority Report. Sam's 20-minute tush. I am's at my polling place right now in rural Kentucky. All Kentuckians, let's go. Bashir. Antonia's Scalia's ghost. Question for you guys. Can you go into the "From the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free" slogan? I've noticed since October 7th, even more in the past couple of weeks, that slogan has been a point of contention. Some say it's a call for a free Palestinian state. Others, mostly bad faith actors, from what I can tell, call it a slogan to genocide Jewish Israelis. Could you provide some clarity? All I can tell you is that it is not a call to genocide. It is a call for liberation for the people who were dispossessed. And that dispossession happened from the river to the sea. But I will also say that when you look at the force of just a fraction of like any given hour's worth of destruction, both in property and, more relevantly, lives that have taken place over the past 3 or 4 weeks in Gaza, and compare that to the implications of a slogan for people who don't have the ability right now to even get water for themselves. I can't even begin to think about what could be a bigger distraction.
Well,
like any like 20 minutes that I spend on elucidating the history of that slogan, when in the main, I don't even like to go into the sort of the moral righteousness argument as who was on the land first, because then I've got to go back to like, were Palestinians there prior to, Abraham or prior to, Moses entering the land of Canaan, or, do those claims of from the first temple or the second temple or the Temple Mount mean that Palestinians don't have a right to be on that land? Like, it's absurd. Just you asking that question is indicative of what it's supposed to do. Like, it's supposed to be a distraction from what's actually happening.
Absolutely. I think you can liken it a little bit to when talking about trans issues, like the relentless desire to bring the conversation back to girls volleyball in Minnesota, or a girls or a college swim meet in Arizona, right? Like, let's talk about these issues that are designed to be divisive and are kind of ancillary or fourth, fifth order to like the real issue in question here, in order to create divisions. It's a wedge issue in the way that it's constructed. So like, I agree with Sam. I do not think that the slogan is a call for genocide in any way. But it's not really honestly helpful for anybody to be engaging in this, because when someone wants to talk to you about the slogan, say, let's talk more about the fact that a child in Gaza is dying every 15 minutes. That's what we need to be talking about here.
I mean, here to put it in simplistic terms. We know for a fact, it's indisputable. Now you can say, oh, but this is trumped by the fact that biblically Jews were in Palestine. But we know for a fact what the Jewish population was in the lead up to 1948. We know for a fact, Israeli documents, that there was widespread, hundreds of thousands of people dispossessed of their homes in Palestine. Gaza exists because of as essentially a big refugee camp. We know for a fact that there were massacres of Palestinians in the days and months before Israel declared its independence. But I mean, if you're talking about that slogan for Palestinian independence, name for me one instance in which the Israeli government in an act of retribution or acknowledgement of the dispossession of these Palestinians from their homes, ever nurtured the growth of a civil movement in which it could engage with an attempt. And you could never be fully, let me put it this way. I don't anticipate the Israeli government to ever fully compensate the Palestinian losses. But there's never been an attempt to even perceive the idea that at least a significant portion of people who say that slogan are interested in just simply the liberation and dignity and respect for the Palestinian people. There's never been an attempt. It is a deliberate process.
Yeah. I mean,
to make sure that they never had a partner for peace. They would say, we have no partner for peace. And they're every single thing that the country has done, at least for the last 40 years, has been to ensure that there would be no peace. And certainly within some segments of the Palestinian population, there were people who, for whom it didn't benefit peace, but there have been multiple attempts over the decades to have the, Palestinian Gandhi, because they don't want the Palestinian Nelson Mandela. He's still in jail in Israel.
Yeah, was a terrorist in the United States on the terrorist watch list until 2008.
Yeah.
So just give you a sense of some of the similarities.
But every time that there was a Palestinian Gandhi, that person ended up being jailed, intimidated,
disempowered,
shut down.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's that's where you have to continue to bring the conversation back to. So those realities. And I would say good resource for some of this stuff is Zachary Foster, who is a historian of Palestine. He's on Twitter and he has a newsletter as well. He did a thread on this very topic, and you'll be able to get some context from him.
On that saying?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So having given you that resource, let's turn to domestic politics. We talked about that polling that came out yesterday, showing Joe Biden behind in 5 key swing states. It's been behind in others. I mean, this I think this is going to be surprising to people in terms of Simone Sanders' analysis of this is one that I actually agree with. I don't necessarily maybe agree with what she wants as an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of her analysis, this is my sense. And I said this as much yesterday as well, which is I don't think there's any dislodging Joe Biden from the nomination of the Democratic Party. But here is, this is from NBC News. I'll explain what I mean by that.
And we should also just say that Sanders has worked, she previously worked for Bernie Sanders, but then in 2020 worked for the Biden campaign.
Yeah,
so
I'm not a
partisan
fan
on
of
this
hers.
front. Yeah, right.
But I think she is this is really more about an inter-Racine fight between really Democratic consultants and business and entrepreneurs, as it were. But I do think that there is a truth in this. And let's pick it up from here. She's reacting to David Axelrod's tweet the other day.
I was speaking with one person familiar with the Biden team's thinking on this. This person said, well, look, it's no real surprise. David Axelrod has consistently been a detractor of the Biden administration. What would you say?
I would also argue, and I love Axe, but he was also a detractor of the 2020 Biden campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised by this, but it's very disingenuous. Democrats, especially Democratic strategists, know. Republican strategists, anyone who is a professional politico, hell, the reporters know. Joe Biden is the president of the United States of America. Therefore, the head of the party that he is on the ticket of, he is a Democrat. And if the president of the United States of America is eligible to run for re-election and decides to do so, that's your nominee, baby. That's how it works. I know that that might not sound democratic, but that is the game. That's how it works. And so David Axelrod's comments
All right, pause it. Let's just
crazy.
make it right there. Like, what she's basically saying is, within the history of our politics, certainly within the modern history, the nominee, the sitting president, is the nominee under all circumstances, unless that person decides to resign, like LBJ. Now, it's quite possible he decides to resign, but I don't think that we're not getting any indication. Now, maybe if Jill Biden came down and said, sweetheart, I don't want you to run for whatever reason, that may happen. But in terms of like what's going to happen, we could definitely have somebody run a credible challenge against Biden. That window seems to have been long past.
We're a year from the election.
But someone could have certainly run a credible challenge and could have forced Biden maybe to adopt certain positions. None of that's happening right now. So I just want to be clear on what she's saying there. It's not the president has said that he wants to be the candidate, and there's no historical precedent for dislodging him. But continue.
Your nominee, baby. That's how it works. I know that that might not sound democratic, but that is the game. That's how it works. And so David Axelrod's comments are kind of crazy because Joe Biden did make his decision. He has started a re-election campaign.
But was it the right decision? That's the question.
Well, he made it though. So like, what we want? Like, Joe Biden has been trying to be president since before I was born. Okay, he's been running for president since 1988. The idea that he would get the presidency, beat Donald Trump, vaccinate America, finally have infrastructure week, make the largest investment in infrastructure since the people that invented the interstate, and he's not going to run for re-election.
So, I mean, the point being that the guy has had being president his entire life, has been his entire life goal. He's got in there. He has all of the things that he needs, which I would imagine is a low bar if you are someone who aspires to be president, to convince him that he's the only guy for the job. And he made the decision. And I guess the point is that she's trying to make here, when that other guy at the table said, is it the right decision? Well, it may not be. I mean, in my estimation, I can conceive of a way in which he could have decided not to run and set it up where it wouldn't have a negative impact on the chances of a Democratic nominee. But that time is long past. And so the question is it the right decision? If you care, and I'm not saying that everybody who hears the sound of my voice it does or should care. Put that aside for a moment. But if your argument is, I'm worried that Joe Biden's going to lose because this is such an important election because Donald Trump represents, a full-on fascism. You have really one choice if your idea is to influence the outcome of that election, right? Presumably, we all give David Axelrod the benefit of the doubt that he's doing this for the sake of the country and presumably for the sake of the Democrats.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't.
But let's just for a moment stipulate that's what we're led to believe.
Right.
That's what he's trying to communicate. I care about the country, and therefore I'm going to imply that Joe Biden is should step down when he knows that Joe Biden is not going to step down. He knows this. He knows this better than any of us here. And to then sort of talk about Biden's weaknesses in that context, if ostensibly you're doing this because you want the Democrat to win, you're either an idiot or full of it. you can't hold those two ideas.
Yes.
Because Joe Biden is not going to be convinced by David Axelrod, and David Axelrod knows this. And David Axelrod, and everybody knows that, Joe Biden's not going to be convinced by anybody who gets within 10 feet of Joe Biden's ear. Because everybody within 10 feet of Joe Biden's ear, their whole career is tied to Joe Biden too. And so it's just not going to happen unless it's literally Jill Biden. And Jill Biden's not reading Twitter to decide. She's just saying what's going on around the house.
Well, I mean, I think this kind of tactic from Axelrod would have had a lot more potency 6 months ago, right? I mean, we didn't have these numbers 6 months ago, but if he really wanted to float Pritzker, which is my suspicion given his ties to the Illinois Democratic machine there, that would have been effective 6 months ago to basically say, hey, raising the alarms, asking some questions. But we are in a period where it's just, there's not going to be, I think, a challenge mounted against Joe Biden that would have really any salience except to weaken the Biden campaign in the sense that, the first primary is what? January 15th in Iowa? Or is that the Republican one? We're talking 2 months away when the Democratic primary begins. And that's a lot of time for someone like Pritzker to come in and make a case that he's better than the incumbent. And it's just like, we can have these observations as people that look at politics and see how insanely old Biden is, how he's not great on the stump, how he's not very charismatic at this point in his life, and how he's making these horrific choices when it comes to Gaza. But the reality is that the average Democratic voter values incumbency and values the party line more than the average people who are commenting on this. You'd be shocked to see the popularity of Nancy Pelosi during her time as speaker within the Democratic caucus. It's something similar in that dynamic, but I do think that there is a bit of a miscalculation in the sense that the fear is that there will be people that just stay home who normally would have voted for Biden, and that the turnout is going to be much less, which is a lot of what buoyed Biden to winning in 2020. Well, it was the most voted in election in the history of the country.
If there was someone out there to challenge Joe Biden, they would be there now. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind there are people who are, sort of trying to put themselves out there in the event that something happens to Joe Biden, which is conceivable. I mean, but if there was someone out there who was willing to challenge Joe Biden, it would take a lot more than, 20%, 40%, 50% of people saying they'd rather not, 70% of people they'd rather not have Joe Biden. Even if somebody was to be running in the campaign, and I know there's candidates who have this theory, I'm going to get 25 or 30% in the polls, and then I'm going to step aside because somebody else will come in. If you're Pritzker, if you're Whitmer, if you're Gavin Newsom, if you're Shapiro, if you're anybody with aspirations to be president, there is absolutely zero reason why you would ever run in 2024. Because in 2028, no matter who wins, there's not going to be an incumbent. It's possible, I guess, that Donald Trump would still be alive at that point, but he would not be in terribly great shape. And I would imagine 4 years of Donald Trump will get you the same reaction that the last 4 years did. A Democrat's going to know that. All you need to do is look at Ron DeSantis. If you are a Democratic presidential wannabe and go, running against Joe Biden is the best way for me to not become president, because I probably won't win in the primary because you need 51% of the vote, and you're just not going to get it against an incumbent president. Just hasn't happened before. That's a huge risk. And all you're going to do is piss off a whole bunch of people who you'll need in 2028. So you're going to wait till 2028. This is rudimentary. So when you see people out there promoting the idea that Joe Biden is bad and should step aside, know two things. They have no influence on Joe Biden, A, and B, they are not really caring about what the fundamental premise of what that, complaint is. It's one thing to say, like, I'm worried Joe Biden's going to lose. It's another to keep saying, although every intelligent person who knows anything about politics, he's not going to step aside because of cries from people, because you're just not going to get there. You know, like the polling was there months ago. 70% of Democrats would rather a different candidate. There's no other poll to take.
Yeah.
That did not move him.
Then all we're talking about here is fear, right? And it's natural to be fearful.
Oh, I'm terrified. I think, like, I'm worried that Joe Biden's going to lose too. But the idea that these people are out there and are ostensibly sort of like trying to prevent Donald Trump from winning by going out there and saying, over and over again, Biden's too old and this and that. And then look, it is, we do not have David Axelrod's reach. And to the extent that we express, sort of concerns about him losing, it just simply doesn't have the same impact. And we know that, and you know that. Frankly, the stuff he's doing with Israel, I find so repugnant and offensive that I don't even want to talk right now about the idea of like of having to hope that Joe Biden wins. The only difference is I know there's going to be two people on the ballot who are going to have a chance to win, or maybe three, maybe RFK, and there's every reason to believe that both of those other two are further to the right on the question of Israel and Gaza than Joe Biden.
Yep.
RFK I think, has tried to stake out a position to the right of Joe Biden on Israel.
Oh, he's been active in doing so, certainly.
And again, Donald Trump, that's a wash in the election. You still got to vote for somebody because you're being clean of like responsibility. When you stop paying your taxes, when you're sitting in jail, or when you have self-immolated on the steps of the Capitol, then you could tell me that you're completely clean in what the U.S. government does. But the idea of not voting for somebody, it doesn't make you
but that
cleanse you of your
certainly. But then that's a separate question to the likely, fury that Arab Americans are experiencing right now towards Biden. That, I understand the anger and saying essentially, I can't do it.
Me too.
I can't do it.
Me too. But it's not because of that you don't want to be morally besmirched. It's because you're angry at that candidate.
And that anger is righteous.
You don't want to win. Yeah, understandable.
That's different, I would say. We should just draw a line between that and like the kind of
I think it's understandable. I think it's understandable that people would be angry at this. And I understand it. I understand that anger. I don't know that it necessarily means that you're voting in the interest that you hope for, but it's also hard to imagine. As much as I think Donald Trump set up this scenario in a way that a Democratic president wouldn't have, in terms of like Jerusalem and promoting a peace plan that got to go down the road that did not involve the Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard to imagine a reaction by a U.S. president that would be more egregious. I can see equally egregious, but I don't know what that would be. $15 billion? I don't know. All right, let's go to the phones. If we can, 646-257-3920. We will be doing coverage for the GOP debate tomorrow night. Was the last theater from the last too much since Trump is the obvious front runner? Yeah, it's ridiculous, but we'll do it. It's our job. 646-257-3920 is the number. LA accent. Sam, do you think people need to be given the opportunity to voice their opinion as long as they fall in line by the general? The last thing we want is for young people to feel like their voice doesn't matter. They won't vote in the general. I mean, listen, I don't even, I'm not in a position to not give people the voice to voice their opinion. We're talking more like the Axelrods and the sort of like people who clearly are just trying to set up a job for themselves with a rival candidate down the road. That's all. All right, let's go to the phones. Oh, people got in there quick. Calling from a 301 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Ramsey. Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's your name?
Ramsey?
Ramsey? Where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from the DMV area, but I'm Palestinian, born and raised in the Bantustan of Ramallah, and I've been living in the U.S. for about 10 years. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, I was watching yesterday when the Israeli-American settler, if I can call him that, called in, and his position as an absolute minority in the Israeli state. And I was just hoping to kind of direct a message at him that, this is a moment that requires absolute courage, and that we should, for him, he can reach out to the Israelis against house demolitions. He can, there are things to do. He's obviously in the minority, and there's a lot of work to do in the Israeli society to kind of cleanse it of its fascist identity. But I think this is something he has to do. I know he wants to stay at home and all that, but because of fear and because of very reasonable fear, but I hope that he is able to do more, because his people need it, my people need it, and so that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The other thing is I finally got to finishing the episode where you talked to Ilan Pape, God bless him, the only reasonable, not the only, but one of the only reasonable Israelis and one of the only reasonable Israeli historians, especially this kind of new historian trend that came out in the late 80s. I did want to kind of point out that, as a Palestinian and as Palestinians since 1948, we have been yelling, screaming at the top of our lungs about what happened in 1948. And it took 40 years and the opening of Western archives, whether that's the American, the British, the Israeli archives, for anyone to even begin believing us in terms of what happened in the Nakba and such. And I think it's something glaring about Western society that it takes this quote-unquote scientific research when for 40 years Palestinians have been telling you about the broken bones, have been telling you about the massacres, have been telling you about the mass graves. Obviously, I'm not talking about you, Sam, but you know what I mean. And it's clear to me, obviously, but Palestinians have always shared the truth, and they seriously need to be listened to, especially in a moment like this, because we all have had our experiences. And I'm from Ramallah, which you may know is the safest of the cantons of the West Bank, because the PA is basically spies for the Israeli state, and so they keep each other safe in a way. I also wanted to, from that conversation with Pape, or Pop, I don't know how to say his last name.
Papi.
But Papi, that's how they say it.
I think
Papi.
so.
And yeah, so that conversation with Papi, I think kind of what was missed is what the Nakba and all the years after really mean for a Palestinian like me, who's, I'm a post-Oslo baby, right? So I'm born in the 1990s. Have experienced Palestine only in a specific moment, but the truth is that the Nakba is a gaping generational wound on the Palestinian people. Because of the actual violence, because of the fact that we were never listened to, never heard on the topic. And I think we have to put that at the center of our analysis of Palestinians' response to what's going on this past month. All the Palestinians I know, we don't condemn Hamas, right? Not because we love the murder of children. It is us that know how devastating the murder of civilians are, because we've been through it. We've seen it. My best friend was shot and murdered when I was 16 years old by an Israeli sniper. And I share this story, but everybody I know has this story. My grandmother's parents, her dad was murdered in 1947. She's from Jerusalem, by a Zionist terrorist group that bombed a car and blew him up into smithereens. And then her mom, the year later, had a hole the size of a volleyball in her hip from another explosion done by Zionist terrorists in 48. Just to say that there's all these experiences that we as Palestinians share and know of. And my personal first memories of my life are in the Second Intifada, when I was staring out a window as a 5-year-old or 4-year-old, I should say, and a tank's turret moved. I was looking at a tank from outside my home, and the turret moved and aimed at me. And this memory is a second long, and recently I watched my brother from a 2002 interview he had. He was 10 years old, where he recites this memory, and it really, it confirmed that my memory was very real. And what he said was that Ramzi was so terrified he hid under a couch for several hours. And a lot of my first 3-4 experience memories, I should say, are of violent moments in the Intifada. All of this to say is that the condemnation of Hamas, let's say, is so dishonest in so many ways. Not because, again, murdering children is fine. I don't believe it at all. Murdering is bad. I come from a Quaker Palestinian household, actually. I've been raised in quite a pacifist surrounding, but this is just the reality of the situation. I fully, 100% support armed resistance that's going on right now in Gaza against the Israeli occupation and maybe future annexing, future colonization of Palestine. I think that's about all I had to say.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, obviously, you can look at tactics and say there are tactics that you disagree with, but the idea of resistance, it seems unreasonable to me to not expect resistance from this. And I can tell you that from the perspective of someone who, as a kid, grew up with an awareness of this conflict, but in retrospect, my awareness was extremely one-sided. And just to give you a sense of what I think is really fundamentally changed is the ability for people to hear from Palestinians. I mean, I think that the revelations I was not aware of the new historians in real time at all for decades.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, I distinctly remember like the sense of like Israel being very adept. And in retrospect, I realized it's not just adeptness, but it was really just a question of like the access to Western media and the cultural similarities with so many Europeans settling Israel just made it far more successful and made it far more easier for them to hear Israeli voices versus Palestinian voices. And I try and like, even sort of compare and contrast to what, to South Africa, where there really isn't, I mean, I think the brutality of Israel in this regard has been sort of far more excessive, but just the access to the message, like why we're in I guess it was in the 80s, as a college student, why were we pushing for what was functionally BDS of South Africa, but not anything similar to Israel. And I think it was just a matter of like, sort of like there was more parity in terms of the access to American media. I don't know. It really is horrible to think about, but that it is taken this long. And, it certainly, as horrific as these attacks were on October 7th, in terms of like the tactics, but I think it has, made the world pay more attention to the plight and frankly shown the absolute lack of parity in terms of the capacity of one party over the other in terms of to create destruction and immiserate in the immiseration of people.
It's a sea change. This is a generational shifting moment on, at least from the United States' perspective, like domestically, in terms of my generation and our perception of what Israel is and of Zionism. I mean, we're learning.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I think so many. I mean, and like it's a small comfort given the atrocities that we see daily. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a Palestinian American. Can I ask you that, right? Like,
sure.
I mean, what is it? You pay taxes. Like, what is this like to not feel like you're able to have your government represent you in even the most marginal ways as they, the push to fund Israel's bombardment and war crimes seems to not be slowing down in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I mean, I think they really just, and, I'm a man that cares about justice for all, and, we see what happened in 2020 with BLM and the lack of action since, and the same goes for Palestine. I think it's just like the whole system is just so blasted and broken that I can't kind of I do find myself putting blame on myself in a way. Like, I live in this country and I'm paying taxes that are going directly to the killing of my own people. And it's frankly just made me want to move back to Palestine. Ever since October 7th, I've been just itching to go back and live there, because that's really the future I see for myself. But it's really hard being an American of who cares about any kind of injustice. It's a really dark and twisted country with that needs a generational work, just like Israel does, in terms of that. And I wanted to say a couple of other things, if I can. One is, our greatest writers and artists have all been assassinated by Israel. Like, this is just a fact. Like, they have, like Ghassan Kanafani or Najil Ali. Like, we...
And there's a reason they're targeting universities right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because they aim to deprive us of our own culture, of our own education, of our own knowledge, of our own libertary fervor that kind of lives within every Palestinian. Also, I forgot to say at the beginning of this that rest in peace to Michael Brooks. He's dearly missed at a time like this.
Ramsey, what can folks who are listening do in some way? Maybe ones that people are already doing, or ones that are obvious or not obvious, to, from your perspective, feel like they can support this cause of justice for Palestinians.
I think there's like the obvious things, right? Go to the protests, call your representatives, do all that stuff, post on Instagram, talk to your friends. And I've been stressing this to my Palestinian friends and to my American friends, is that this is a moment to arm ourselves with the knowledge to kind of counteract all the disinformation, the Hasbara, or whatever you want to call it, that is being strewn out. This is a moment where we need absolute clarity in our solidarity and in our messaging, and we just need to be informed. Like people that are listening right now, you need to go read about Sabra and Shatila, and don't go to Wikipedia, and read about just Tel Zata, read about the massacre in Khan Yunis. There are so many things that we must, as allies of Palestine and as Palestinians, and as people who care about justice, need to do to inform ourselves and to be armed with that. Because I'm not gonna go grab a gun anytime soon, but I do know that I can be decent with words, and that's what I'm doing. So I think everybody just look at your strengths. Can you write? Do it. Can you read? Do it. Just take the time out of your day to really educate yourself on the history. And I also want to say, and I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, it's a sad reality that, and nothing but love to JVP and all the Jewish voices that have been coming out in solidarity of Palestine. But it is such a sad reality that it takes them for us to be heard. And it can't be me.
Right.
Right. So all the white people listening in right now, you, unfortunately, have more authority than I do. I have a master's in Arab studies. My undergrad was also about the Arab world. I'm a Palestinian, born and raised in Palestine, and yet my view is painted as biased and emotional. And I think it's up to you all, fellow listeners, wherever you come from, to kind of build that knowledge base for yourselves and be an advocate. Be an advocate. Be nice to each other. This is a long fight. This is a very long fight.
Before I let you go, Ramsey, what books, if you could suggest a couple of books that you think people should read?
Sure. Well, I think a great book is The 100-Year War on Palestine by Rashid Khaldi. I think it just gives you the full account, the broad account.
I literally just downloaded that on Audible last night, so it's good that.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
It's really it's a really good book to read. You can also read things like that, The Cleansing of Palestine by Ilan Papi. Just start there. Just start with Rashid Khaldi's book. It's fantastic. It is, and it's for all those scientific historians, it's purely facts. All you're gonna get. There's you can discuss narrative and things like that, but we're talking about just brutal, hard to read facts.
All right. Well, we will link to that in the podcast and YouTube description. Ramsey, thanks so much for calling in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam and Emma, everyone else.
Stay strong.
Take care.
Stay strong.
Thanks.
I mean, we're beginning. There's beginning to be an understanding of the deep racism surrounding the narratives about Palestine and Israel in the West. I mean, we showed that that old quote of Netanyahu from the 70s saying, well, as long as they're white soldiers with a grin. Like there is a deep anti-Arab, anti-brown person kind of bias in the nature of this conversation that's been tamped down because people have been told it's complicated or it's anti-Semitic to call it out. And I feel day by day more and more people getting emboldened and learning and having the knowledge base to be able to beat back those smears. It's changing, but it's just coming at an immense cost.
Calling from a 585 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 585. 585. We'll find Emma's girlfriend. Since Emma mentioned Audible, keep in mind they are donating 6 months free to IOF members. Libby is a great alternative.
Do you mean IDF members?
Yes, but people are saying IOF members.
Oh,
these days.
offensive?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
But what is Libby?
I didn't know that. All right, well. Trying to be an ethical consumer, and that was not on the BDS list.
Oh,
I
that's
thought.
the public library version.
Yeah.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah.
We just did that 585. Calling from a 416 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 416. What is going on? Can you hear me? 416? We didn't change anything, did we? You're seeing 58?
No, I'm seeing 416. 416, they're just not hearing us.
Okay, let's try this one more time, shall we? 678. 678. 678. 678. Are you there?
We hear you in your car.
Yes. Yes, I am. Hello?
Hello. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Atlanta. My name is Abdul.
Abdul from Orlando?
Atlanta.
Atlanta. Okay. What's on your mind, Abdul?
I just wanted to talk about the Biden situation, especially when it's come to maybe the voting in Georgia here.
Yeah.
And so I work for UPS, so I get to talk to a lot of people. Obviously, it's not everybody. But I think the Democratic Party maybe is making a mistake by thinking just that black people are not informed, what is going on. And when it comes to election day, that, people are just going to close their eyes and vote for Biden, and they're counting on the fear of, Trump, and I think that is a mistake, and a little bit is looking like 2016 again, so.
What?
Yeah, and
give me. I mean, okay. So people are making a mistake in their assessment, but give me your assessment from when you're talking to people. Like, what is it that you hear that makes you question the assessment that you're suggesting?
For example, if you remember, Biden came to Atlanta here, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. And people stayed in their cars, actually, when he had a rally. And he promised people, especially in Atlanta here, that he will work hard and pass, the George Floyd, Policing Act. And then he's going to pass, the Voting Rights Act. And he didn't do none of that.
Yep.
But most importantly, he didn't, fight for it, And if you do remember, he came to Atlanta here, and a lot of the organizers that actually organized people to go vote really, shown him. I don't know if you remember that, and one of the reasons why even, Stacey Abrams, didn't win in Georgia here because she did play some games, in here. So I'm just saying that the voting black, the younger people kind of know what is going on.
Yeah.
Maybe the older Democrat might just vote for Biden, but the younger people, and, for example, when I talk to people, they always say, well, how come Biden when the war in Ukraine happened, he's been just sending money, billions and billions. And there was a water crisis in Jackson, by Mississippi, and it's like a majority black, city. And, nothing was done. He didn't even mention it. There will not talk about it, So people kind of look at all those things and just say, why are we voting, really? So I just think there is a lot of miscontent here when it comes to the, voting. And I don't think, the organizers are going to work as hard as they did in 2020.
It's hard to imagine. Yeah.
And if you remember in Georgia, really, people work hard. I campaigned for Warnock, I campaigned for John Ossoff, and everything else. So, and if he's counting, and I think they're making a mistake also. They think that the suburb of Georgia is white, and it's not. The majority of the black people now live in the suburb, actually. Even the city of Atlanta, the downtown Atlanta is really small. The city of Atlanta is really a suburb when you think about it. So, and the people are looking at like he didn't fight also for, as far as canceling student debt. So
I think the student debt fallout is a real thing that they're also experiencing in terms of like these polling numbers.
Yeah, and because some people also have stocks, and that's why I think some black people vote for maybe Trump, because when Trump was president, the interest rate was really low. So and I don't know why they think black people just are in one way. It is so diverse, and I talk to people, and I'm not saying people are gonna go vote for Trump, but a lot of people are just
going to stay home.
Yeah.
That's the, I appreciate the call, Abdul.
Thanks, sir.
Certainly, I think Abdul's theory is borne out in that polling that we saw, to the extent that, we can tell anything from the polling a year out. But if you look at those swing state polling, it's not that Trump's numbers have grown. It's that Biden's have shrunk.
Yes.
And so the difference between the generic Democratic ballot, and again, all caveats about a generic Democrat is always going to be better than a specific individual, or almost always, because a generic anything is better than a specific thing, because you can't, there's no negatives.
Right.
But the difference is not that Trump gets more or less. It's that people are turned off by Biden, and they're not going to go to Trump. I mean, they're just not going to go and vote for Biden. And it's a problem.
Yes.
And I don't know what
we can do about it.
I don't know. It's a problem. I don't know what Biden's going to do about it. I mean, maybe the election will turn on how much Donald Trump is out there and turns off a certain percentage of his voters, which is, I think that's the thing that we haven't seen yet, right? Is that Donald Trump has been incredibly quiet during this time. And the only thing that can hinder Donald Trump's chances, it seems to me, is more people being exposed to him and remembering.
Yep.
We'll see. I don't know. Okay, let's take one more phone call. 518, calling from the Hudson Valley area of New York, if I'm not mistaken. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Jay from Troy, New York.
Jay from Troy, New York, in the Albany area of New York
correct.
State. What's happening, Jay? Did you go out and vote today?
Not, but I'm waiting for later this afternoon, and then I'm going to go vote. But actually, my call is is pertaining to that. So the last few days, there's a mayoral race that's taking place in Troy, and the last few days, the Republican candidate has been sending out, text messages and that sort of thing. And she's sort of changed the way that she's been presenting herself. Like, for instance, the color, instead of sending things in the color of red, she's been sending things in the color of green. And she doesn't mention being a Republican anywhere in the information. And, saying things like a strong, independent voice. And so I was just wondering, is this some kind of tact to, because obviously Republicanism in the general sense is, probably unpopular in urban areas. I just wonder if this is a way of her being kind of detracting from the Republican thing, saying oh, I'm an independent, when in reality she's running on the Republican ticket.
It is definitely a strategy to where she is at the, she feels like she has motivated as many Republicans as possible. She's also, if you're getting this, okay, they know your voting. They know your voting pattern. They know how you registered at the very least, and because they're using voter lists, and they know how you registered. They're quite sure, that you're not a reliable Republican voter. So to you, they're sending stuff that they hope will in some way, make her more palatable to you as a non-Republican faithful voter. And so as a non-faithful Republican voter. And so that's what she's trying to do, of course. I mean, every time you see a campaign sign that doesn't identify the party of the candidate, it tells you something about the area you're in and who they perceive. And a campaign sign, right? Is different. They're targeting you. And so they don't, I'm quite sure she's targeting Republican voters, and Democrats do the same thing, I would imagine. Maybe not so much in New York State, because being a Democrat in New York State is not necessarily the liability that is like a Republican, but it depends on which area you're in and who you're targeting. And so they're trying to sort of build on their Republican tallies, and they have to, right? Because I would imagine, although I'm not sure off the top of my head about what the registration breakdown is in Troy, but I imagine there's more Democrats than Republicans. So they need, if they're going to get voters, they need to get those people out. And my guess is also you're a reliable voter. In other words, you probably go and vote often. They know that because they see how often you vote. That's part of the voting rolls. So they know you're going to vote. They don't want to motivate somebody who is likely to vote Democrat to go and vote if they don't have a history of voting. So they're targeting a likely voter, one they imagine would be somewhat hostile, and trying to project to you that they are independent as opposed to Republican.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's interesting, though, that if I'm a motivated voter, I'm likely an informed voter too. And I wouldn't see through that,
I mean, on the margins, the bet is, but on the margins. And just remember, they have limited resources, right? And so they're not going to do this willy-nilly, and they're going to target it because they got to expend money every time they send something. I don't know how many, it's 6 cents or 10 cents or whatever it is.
Sure.
But that's what's going on. But
and it's a volume game, right? You're going to be more informed, and that you're more informed, but there may be somebody who's voting.
Not everybody listens to the majority.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Well, I just thought that you guys might find that interesting.
It is interesting, yes.
But, left is best, and free Palestine. And I really appreciate all the work you guys do. Awesome. I'm a regular follower, first time, long time.
Great.
Just love your content.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's do one more clip here.
Eric Adams is the one I have.
There's so many here that I want to do too, though. Trump's.
All right, you get the final say.
Let's hold off on the Eric Adams. We can do that. All right, we may have time for both.
All right. That's fine.
All right, folks, that is it for our phone call portion of our program. We'll end on let's do first. Donald Trump took the stand yesterday in his own fraud case, and he did not do great. In addition to basically saying that Letitia James was a political hack, just going after him, and
Her.
that going after him.
Oh, sorry.
And that the judge had decided that Donald Trump was already a fraud, which
he
is,
doesn't even know me. He doesn't even know who
he doesn't even know who I am.
Judge me. Don't judge a book by its cover.
He also
By his spray
said,
tan.
which is going to be, I really do think is a problem, that the financial statements that Trump Inc. put out and Trump's personal guarantee on those financial statements were to induce banks to lend money. Now, if you sign off on a fraudulent document with the purpose of inducing a bank to lend you money, in other words, like I'm going to give as my personal collateral or whatever the project I'm doing is worth $10 million. And you say it's $10 million because you know if you say it's $6 million, it will be less of an inducement to the bank to loan you money.
Yeah.
It's almost like definition of what fraud is, at least in this context.
Absolutely.
And so what do you do if you're a lawyer and you realize, can't control my client, he's a lunatic, he will say whatever he wants because he really is just running for president, and I can't talk about the testimony. So what do I do? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what Alina Habba, Donald Trump's attorney, does.
Computer froze.
Coming from the judge who has already predetermined that my client committed fraud before we even walked into this courtroom. I'm not here to hear what he has to say. Then why exactly am I being paid as an attorney, and why exactly are taxpayer dollars being used in this courtroom? The answer is very clear. Because Miss James wants to stand right here like she did this morning and call my client a liar, call the company fraudulent, and make a name for herself. She said this morning that the numbers don't lie and they won't lie in this case. Well, Miss James, I have a message for you. The numbers didn't lie when you ran for governor, and that's why you dropped out. And the numbers don't lie when President Trump runs for office in 2024. And those numbers are loud and clear. This country is falling apart. And if we don't stop corruption in courtrooms where attorneys are gagged, where attorneys are not allowed to say what they need to say to protect their clients' interests, it doesn't matter what your politics are. Everyone has a right in this country to get up and put a defense. I don't care who you are. You have a right to hire a lawyer who can put objections on the record. You have a right to hire a lawyer who can stand up and say something when they see something wrong. But I was told to sit down today. I was yelled at, and I've had a judge who is unhinged slamming a table. Let me be very clear. I don't tolerate that in my life. I'm not going to tolerate it here. And you know what? You shouldn't either. Because not every American citizen gets a camera and a microphone. And what I'm seeing is such a demise of American judicial system and democracy. Miss James came out this morning.
Okay, I mean, I think we
and said
get the point. She's, if you've ever been in a courtroom, and I have a friend who's actually a judge, not doing big criminal cases like this, but the judge is stern.
Yes.
Like, you sit down, be quiet. don't ask me this question right now. I is my courtroom. That happens, and she knows it.
I mean, I don't need to know a judge for that. I can just watch Law and Order SVU, and I have a pretty good sense of it. So, exactly. I guess Alina hadn't done that.
But I mean, the beauty of coming out and basically giving the exact same speech that Donald Trump was giving in there, which is essentially like, I won the 2020 election. Letitia James did not.
Oh, yeah, look
Therefore,
at that.
it's impossible for me to have committed fraud, even though I just admitted to it.
I mean, what a dig. What a completely useless dig in the middle of there against Tish James. But that is a Trump attorney, right? That's exactly what he would say. She lost so bigly.
Well,
unlike
again,
me.
and in this instance, I mean, this is like the case that really could be problematic for him, even if he's becomes president, because he's not going to get his company back.
Oh my God, he cares mostly about money. He ran in 2016 as a branding proposition in order to keep making money, putting himself out there.
His defense for all of these is to win the presidency and then get out of it.
Yep.
That's his defense. There's no legal strategy as much as it is a political strategy. And so every moment of the courtroom battles has to be something that ultimately, in his mind, helps him get elected. And I got to say, like, if there's a conviction in some of these things, it may inhibit Trump's election, certainly. But taking him off the scene, tying him up in a way that everybody's like, that's why he's tied up. That's why we don't see him. I think is actually helping his numbers. I
think so too.
But
I mean, it
we'll
was a
see.
smart strategy.
It wasn't his.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, the debate stuff was his, at least, to keep himself out of the spotlight and just let those clowns work it out themselves.
Okie public defender. Are you even a defense lawyer if the judge hasn't yelled at you? LOL. Freighter 12. Trump's hiring brunettes now. Shit's getting real. My God. And Antonin Scalia's ghost. So am I missing something, or does she just sound like a terrible lawyer? Well, like I say,
yes.
the point is, the point is that their defense is going to be get elected to presidency. That's it.
I mean, and also, she might be a horrible lawyer because Donald Trump can't retain a lawyer that has any respectability, given the fact that he just doesn't pay his bills.
Yeah.
It was a horrible client.
Oh, without a doubt.
Her credentials prior were she was the general counsel for a parking garage company and also the attorney for former Real Housewife of New Jersey, Siggy Flicker.
Well, she also went to my high school, so that's
well,
the
there
other
you go.
unfortunate thing.
Notable alums.
Kent
Emma
Place
Vigeland
School for
and Alina
Girls.
Hoppe.
Yeah, really churning out just lots of ideological diversity. You got to give him credit.
All right. Final clip of the day, ladies and gentlemen. You will note that there has been two different sort of criminal investigations really close to Eric Adams.
Yeah.
One was who's the other guy? Ulrich was
Eric Ulrich, yeah.
Ulrich.
Former city councilman and Department of Buildings head.
Who was a big fundraiser for Eric Adams. And he is now, I don't know if he's actually in a jail, but he is looking at some jail time. And it remains to be seen how much he talks about Eric Adams. My guess is not that much. Because he sounds like a guy who his future, at one point he'll get out of jail if he ends up going, and his future is going to be a function of how discreet he is.
Exactly.
But there's another investigation. The FBI raided the home of a former Eric Adams, longtime.
The chief fundraiser for his campaign.
The chief fundraiser for his campaign, but it's also not just like, oh, I was running for mayor and I just hired somebody. I met her for the first time. This is someone who's been working with him for like maybe over a decade in various capacities in city government.
She's young. She's like 25, 26, but she's basically her entire professional experience is with Eric Adams.
Maybe like 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
She's like intern even at
yeah,
one
she
point.
started out as his intern and became his chief fundraiser, and she is also the goddaughter of Ingrid Lewis Martin, who is his like chief advisor.
Okay, so she's been in the
It's a family
operation
affair.
maybe a decade's a little bit longer, but maybe it's 7 or 8 years. And she also has these like relationships, I guess, with Turkish like officials.
Yeah.
Like, and this FBI investigation, they raided her home, was to find these connections. Now, just because I am sure it's just a coincidence that just because the chief fundraiser supposedly got a lot of money from Turkish nationals, which incidentally, as a federal, you're not supposed to provide foreign money for domestic campaigns. I am sure it is just a coincidence that Eric Adams has a cameo in this Turkish movie.
And it's also a coincidence that in 2014, apparently Adams said that he'd never been to Turkey before. And but then when asked about it in just the last month, he said that he's been, quote, 6 or 7 times. And there's only a public record of 3 of those trips. So I guess he just fell in love with the country of Turkey so much so that he's in, cameos in this film.
When did this movie, this is in 2017. And let's be clear. He was what was
he was either Brooklyn Borough President or in the city council at this point. So,
Right.
so not
But not mayor at this point.
Hocam, benim apartmana bir ek kat çıkabilir miyiz? Bize bir yol yordam göstersen.
Saygıdeğer başkanım, kıymetli Erik Efendi. Alt sokağa bir dönerci dükkanı açalım dedik. Kıçımıza kaçmaya yılan kalmadı. Sizden ruhsatını rica edebilir miyim?
You guys are from Turkey. Brooklyn loves Turkey. Brooklyn is the Istanbul of America. We love your food, we love your music, but I don't understand Turkish. We can take a selfie though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Borough Hall.
There it is. Well done. Let's be honest. It's
tender moment
wait,
happening.
what's going on? It's clearly his acting that they were looking for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's very talented. He's very talented.
Yeah, so that was when he was borough president, which makes sense, obviously, the locale, but
Yeah, it's just it's just a bit interesting, right? So like I guess the allegation is that they got money from Turkey and it was this straw donor scheme. So it's a way to get money from different sources but pretend it's coming from other people in order to meet campaign requirements. But like the FBI probe, that's really, really close to Eric Adams at this point. If you're the chief fundraiser and it's a investigation into illegal campaign contributions potentially, he could get implicated easily. And he already had shady stuff going on. Like he lied about where he lived in the campaign. It was difficult to find where he really actually resided. So I don't know. History of lying. Eric Adams.
All right, couple IMs, then we're out of here. Herb Chambers. Hi, I'm Herb Chambers. Sam, when you say billionaires shouldn't exist, I assume you forget that I am also a billionaire thanks to over 60 dealerships all over New England. I ask you to remember our promise of our service to humanity, Sam. We don't sell cars. We help people buy them. And you're going to go after me when there's that wackadoo Ernie Bach Jr. right there? Come on. Down to D's nuts, Ernie. Not all billionaires. Ernie Bach Sr., my buddy, worked on like a big mansion that he was building.
Oh, really?
Construction. And he got fired like 3 times. He knew somebody who knew somebody. He didn't belong there. It was pretty fine. All right. Couple IMs. All right. My adium didn't work. So, WTF Cody, we really feel like we don't matter to the rest of the country and our votes don't matter enough for presidents to do anything. Just Kafove. Any thoughts on 2020 Trump voters moving to Biden? I haven't seen much data that suggests that's happening, and I'm not quite sure. I think, but what is more likely, again, to happen is 2020 Trump voters not voting. But I don't know. We'll see. Day Mean from Seattle. I'm no Biden fan, but if he did some things like legalizing weed within his ability or surprisingly just canceling debt ahead of the election, wouldn't that give him a pretty big bump? I think promising to do something if he wins won't go far. He's already gone back on promises. Also, could making abortion a huge deal be the thing? That's probably what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Republicans want to fight about that. That's right. Well, I mean, right now they've released the debt canceling plan. It is, patchwork, piecemeal. Going to have a comment section, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a decent argument that the Supreme Court would inhibit the type of deal that he originally wanted to do, but we don't really know because they haven't really tried. In terms of legalizing weed, I also think at least they started the process, and I don't know if that needs to go through a comment period, but that could land before the election too. There's only so much the executive can do in that regard because my understanding is the classification, I'm not 100% sure about this, is statutory. And so there can be sort of like, there's fudge room, but you may need legislation. I'm not sure about that. I got to double check on that again. Uncle Mike, sexual ethics in general, funny. They never had answers when I asked about the horrendous sexual ethics portrayed in the Old Testament, but they were quick to blame the fall of literal empires on gay people. Kowalski, the gays avenged Jesus by destroying the Roman Empire. Man Shovel, Mike Johnson comes across as being an AI construction because he's evangelical and Christian evangelicism is a cult. You guys are spot on. The guy's trying to pivot to seem non-offensive as possible in order to bolster his own political power so that he can bring upon the marriage of church and state. All right, 3 more. Michael from Washington. Hey, MR Crew, I'm Ryan. Say thank you for getting me excited to step up and become a shop steward at my workplace.
Charge.
It's already been almost a year since I stepped up, and I'm so glad I did. Can I get a charge sound drop for all my fellow classified school staff? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because he could have asked for something else, and I just guessed that. Para-educators, classroom support staff, janitors, as well as all my Teamster brothers, sisters, and non-binary siblings out there, left is best. Thank you, Michael. 2 more. BRB forever. Sam, when are you going to get Abby Martin on the show? I know she's a friend of your arch nemesis, Tim Heidecker. And has been on the show live in studio a couple of times, but I hope you can set your beef aside and have her on. I don't have my beef with Tim Heidecker.
No guilt by association here. So
no, I mean, actually, I haven't seen Abby in a long time, but
it'd be good to honestly drive a wedge between the two of them.
That's probably good. That's probably true. We should do that. Militant apathy. How long before we find out the new speaker is into his wife getting banged by black?
Okay, Jesus Christ.
That's no pun intended. All right, the final IM. We're not going to end on that. Sam, could you give me a shout out to the one guy watching this on Rumble that I'm looking for an accountability partner? Says JR and Phil. Hey, folks, if you're watching on Rumble, JR and Philly looking for an accountability partner. In the meantime, Bradley, great job today flying solo. Matt, feel better. I know the Doug Burgum thing is weighing heavily on you, but you'll get through this. Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive